introduction. I'm Joo-Hyun Kang with Communities United for Police Reform, which is a coalition of New Yorkers from all 5 boroughs and of all walks of life in New York City, fighting police discriminatory and abusive tactics by the NYPD, including stop and frisk. Many of our members are affected daily by stop and frisk practices and other NYPD discriminatory tactics. And our member organizations include LGBT organizations like the Anti-Violence Project, the Audre Lorde Project, Fierce, as well as Streetwise and Safe, all of whom are working against discriminatory and abusive practices by the NYPD. Communities United for Police Reform is extremely proud to be standing with National Action Network, NAACP, and 1199, and all the other partners who are working to build this historic march against stop and frisk and against racial profiling. And part of what we see this moment as is a moment where there's a significant and severe civil rights crisis in this city that exemplifies racial profiling at its worst. If not that there's any good racial profiling, but certainly identifies it as its worst. But what we think and what we believe is that on June 17th, with all of our communities standing together, we will not only have a historic mobilization, but this will be the largest mobilization we've seen against NYPD abusive practices and for specifically NYPD accountability and against racial profiling in New York City for over a decade at minimum. As a lesbian of color and as someone who worked with Stonewall veteran Sylvia Rivera before she passed away, one of the things that I think that Sylvia would have wanted to remind us of today is that not only was Stonewall specifically a rebellion against NYPD harassment of LGBT people, but it was specifically homeless New Yorkers, youth, transgender and gender nonconforming people of color who really led Stonewall. And what she would also say, I think, is that decades later, the sad truth is that while some of the laws have changed, we still continue to see discriminatory and abusive policing targeting transgender, gender nonconforming, people of color, and broader communities of color throughout New York City on a daily basis. One of the reasons we're so proud to be working on the mobilization for the Father's Day March, I think, is because of our accountability to people like transgender women of color in Jackson Heights or gender nonconforming youth of color in South Bronx, who are daily being stopped, sometimes unlawfully searched, sometimes having their gender checked supposedly through unlawful searches, humiliated on their blocks, in their homes, on their streets, in front of their neighbors, within their neighborhoods by law enforcement and specifically by NYPD officers. One of the things that we really support and hope all of you will also support, and we know that the March sponsors have supported, is a Community Safety Act, which is a package of bills in front of the City Council right now, 3 of which Sharon Staples already mentioned, one of which is specifically around profiling, to ban profiling not only based on race, but also profiling based on sexual orientation and gender identity, and putting real enforcement teeth behind that. A second is to make a requirement that NYPD officers have specific and explicit consent to do searches, which would outlaw, again, even though it shouldn't necessarily need to be outlawed again, but specifically make unlawful the ways in which NYPD officers oftentimes actually trick gender nonconforming and transgender people into permitting, supposedly, or consenting to unlawful searches based on their gender. So with this, I just wanted to say how proud we are to be standing with all the organizations here and the March conveners for the Father's Day March, and we look forward to seeing all of you there.